Good afternoon, everyone. I want to keep this short. I have a limited amount of time. I want to discuss the topic of the SSPX and supplied jurisdiction. This is in response to an email that I received with regards to the SSPX having supplied jurisdiction. This is one of the many arguments that the SSPX uses to justify their position. So let me bring up the notes and hopefully this will clarify. I'm going to specify what the argument is, and then I'm going to provide 3 separate rebuttals. Welcome, guys. Yeah, I did prepare this in I finished preparing this about 5 minutes ago, and so I only made the announcement about 7 minutes before I went live. But I just felt this was important to get out there if it's causing so much confusion. This is an article on AKA Catholic, and it's Pope Francis confirms SSPX has always had supplied jurisdiction. Yeah, I'm hoping to be on with Francis Bull in a few hours, but I had an event this morning cancelled and moved to this afternoon, so I was hoping to be done before lunch. Now I'm going to be late this evening, so I may, if I'm still able to, I will do a stream with Francis Bull this evening. Yes, Lilo Main, as I said, I had an event that I was supposed to attend this morning, which was cancelled and moved to this afternoon, so I happened to have this time that I wasn't expecting. Yes, Mike Smile, but welcome, good to see you all, and thank you all for being here. Okay, so let me talk about this. So, let me bring up the article. So this is an AKA Catholic, and Pope Francis confirms it. SSPX has always had supplied jurisdiction. And they say here, as the entire traditionalist, AKA Catholic community surely knows by now, in a letter of the Holy Francis, right? He stated, a final consideration concerns those faithful for who various reasons choose to attend churches officiated by the priests of the Fraternity of St. Pius X. And he speaks here of this Jubilee Year of Mercy excludes no one from various quarters. Several brother bishops have told me of their good faith and sacramental practice, combined, however, with an uneasy situation from the pastoral standpoint, right? And he speaks of future solutions may be found to recover full communion with the priests and superiors of the fraternity. So the Pope is here saying that they do not have full communion with the Catholic Church. And he says here, through my own disposition, I established that those who during the Holy Year of Mercy approach these priests of the Fraternity of St. Pius X to celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation shall validly and licitly receive the absolution of their sins. So what does this mean? So his conclusion is ultimately that traditional priests do have a jurisdiction that is neither territorial nor personal, but supplied in view of the needs of the faithful in a state of necessity. So the justification for insisting upon this jurisdiction, supplied extraordinarily by the Church, is the state of necessity. So he's claiming here that the only logical conclusion is that the state of necessity to which the SSPX has long claimed recourse for its insistence that the Church supplies its priests with jurisdiction has always existed, i.e. their argument has always been valid. Like it or not, the Pope himself has just confirmed it. Now, I do want to state, welcome guys, Viceroy, Villainous, this is a false argument. So what I will do is I will link this article later in the description, and I will also make a copy of this document here available to everyone so that you can download it off the Google Drive. So I will link it as a PDF later. So Pope Francis confirms it. This is on AKA Catholic, Louis Verrecchio, right? So let's close that and let's jump into this discussion. So now a note on the document Ecclesia Dei. Ecclesia Dei is the document that Pope John Paul II issued on 2 July 1988 in reaction to the Econe consecrations, in which 4 priests of the Society of St. Pius X were ordained as bishops despite express prohibitions by the Pope. Right? The consecrating bishop and the 4 priests consecrated were excommunicated. They will tell you that all of them were unexcommunicated. This is not true. Right? But that's a deeper discussion for another day. Now, after these consecrations, Bishop Lefebvre said, "We did well to resist. I'm convinced that we are in the same circumstances today. We are performing an act which apparently and unfortunately the media will not assist us in the good sense. The headlines will, of course, be schism, excommunication, to their heart's content, and yet we are convinced that all these accusations of which we are the object, all penalties of which we are the object, are null, absolutely null and void, and of which we will take no account. Yes, villainous, they do deny the authority of the Pope directly. They directly deny the authority of the Pope and the Magisterium. Viceroy says, forgive my ignorance, what exactly is the SSPX? The Society of St. Pius X. They're an offshoot of the Catholic Church. They're effectively a parallel church. They do not recognize the authority of the Pope and the Magisterium. And so they've set themselves up as, I would say, a predatory parallel organization that mimics the church, but they have no standing within the Catholic Church, although, of course, they claim they do. So they're the ones who've spread a great deal of propaganda and rumors after Vatican II, rejecting Vatican II. Right. So now the SSPX, Society of St. Pius X. So now this is now three responses from the Magisterium itself, right? Utilizing magisterial documents, and I've got all the links here. You're welcome to check this later. I will make it available. The Society of St. Pius X does not currently have supplied jurisdiction. So this is jurisdiction to do certain things validly as priests, right? Given to them by the Catholic Church. Does not have supplied jurisdiction to validly celebrate the sacraments, including marriage, within the Catholic Church. They do not. However, the Church has taken steps to address the canonical irregularity of the SSPX and to provide for the pastoral care of the faithful who adhere to the SSPX. Key points are: the SSPX is currently in a state of canonical irregularity, and its ministers do not legitimately exercise any ministry in the Church. The Church has granted certain faculties to SSPX priests to celebrate the sacrament of marriage for the faithful who follow SSPX's pastoral activity. Local ordinaries, that's your local bishop essentially, can grant these faculties either to a diocesan priest to receive the consent of the parties, or to an SSPX priest to celebrate the entire marriage rite. But that is at the decision of the bishop, of the Catholic bishop. This is done to alleviate an uneasiness of conscience on the part of the faithful who adhere to the Society of St. Pius X, as well as any uncertainty regarding the validity of the sacrament of marriage. When they speak of the faithful, they don't mean full SSPX adherents, they mean Catholics who happen to attend SSPX chapels. So the Church has also granted SSPX priests the faculty to validly administer the sacrament of penance to the faithful. So in other words, without having granted these faculties, those who did marriages within the SSPX and those who did their confessions, these were not considered valid. These are outside of the line of apostolic succession, outside of the line of lineage from the Catholic Church, and therefore invalid. In certain cases, Catholic ministers can also administer the sacraments of Eucharist, penance, and anointing of the sick to Christians not in full communion with the Catholic Church, if they freely request it and manifest the Catholic faith in these sacraments. Therefore, the SSPX does not have full canonical status or supplied jurisdiction. The Church has made provisions to address the pastoral needs of the associated faithful with the SSPX and ensure the validity of the sacraments they receive. So regular Catholics who go to the SSPX chapels would not be getting valid marriages, valid sacraments, and so on. So therefore, the Pope has extended these faculties as a mercy to those faithful so that they don't receive these false confessions and these false marriages, these invalid ones. Is this acceptance similar to acceptance of Protestant baptism when done in correct order? I believe so, Villainous. I think it would be something of that type. Yeah, the Church is obviously looking for some way to not reject people, but to try to integrate everyone back into the Catholic Church, right? So you've got the letter of the Pontifical Commission, Ecclesia Dei, to the ordinaries, the bishops of the episcopal conferences concerned, blah, 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 right? So these are the references here. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the multiple references here. Now to response 2. There's 6 of these, all from the Vatican and related organizations. Response 2. The SSPX, Society of St. Pius X, does not have supplied jurisdiction for several critical reasons. Absence of ordinary jurisdiction. So they're claiming extraordinary necessity and jurisdiction, but they don't have ordinary jurisdiction. And also, to make an extraordinary claim means that you have miracles that prove your case. They do not. So according to the canon law and church protocol, jurisdiction flows from Christ through the Pope to bishops and then to priests. SSPX priests do not receive ordinary jurisdiction from bishops in the diocese where they conduct ministries, nor are they incardinated or sent on a mission by a bishop who has the authority to grant such jurisdiction. The Church's definition of supplied jurisdiction. The Catholic Church supplies jurisdiction only under three specific conditions: danger of death, that's Canon Law 976, common error or positive and probable doubt, Canon Law 144, Part 1, and the situation of the SSPX does not meet these criteria, as there is no common error or positive and probable doubt within the Church's community regarding the jurisdiction of the SSPX priests. And the Pope's limited delegation does not establish general jurisdiction. Pope Francis granted faculties to SSPX priests only for hearing confessions and conditionally witnessing marriages during the Jubilee Year of Mercy. Notice, during the Jubilee Year of Mercy, and later extended these faculties indefinitely. However, this does not equate to granting SSPX supplied jurisdiction or regularizing their status. They are not in communion with the Catholic Church. These delegations were specifically limited and do not convey legitimacy to the entirety of SSPX's sacramental actions, nor do they negate the fact that SSPX operates without ordinary jurisdiction. So they are operating outside of the Church. Misinterpretation and misapplication by SSPX. SSPX has been operating on a flawed interpretation that they possess supplied jurisdiction due to an alleged state of necessity. The Church has not recognized such a state of necessity, and canonical provisions for supplied jurisdiction are not meant to be self-assigned based on personal interpretations of crisis or necessity. Because I say so. So this is, effectively speaking, Martin Luther 2.0, because I say so. Canonical status and schismatic acts. Now, I did show you a document in a previous discussion where, in an explanatory document based on a request by a priest to explain the status of SSPX, and I showed in this document in 2 pages, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, called the SSPX schismatic 21 times. They called them schismatic 21 times in 2 pages. Notice, though, that Lefebvre says, all of these are null and void, we won't listen, we don't care, we will take no account of that. Okay, so he's saying we don't care. That's Martin Luther 2.0. So let's see. The SSPX was lawfully suppressed by Pope Paul VI and its activities since, including the unauthorized consecration of bishops, and these are schismatic acts. SSPX's claims to jurisdiction, including ordinary and supplied, are invalidated by their schismatic status, which is acknowledged by various church authorities, including Cardinal Burke, and documentation from the popes. Cardinal Burke is important here because he's a well-known and highly respected canon lawyer. Pope's authority and SSPX's rejection of it. The SSPX fundamentally rejects the supreme and universal jurisdiction of the Pope over the Church. They have set up their own tribunals. Oh, so they've set up their own Sharia law courts. Good move. So the SSPX have their own Sharia courts. Great stuff. Well done. And confer what they claim to be ecclesiastical degrees and powers that directly contradict the established authority of the Pope and the Church's sacred canons. Hence, based on the clear position and rulings from the Church and the very limited and specific nature of the concessions granted by Pope Francis, it is evident that the SSPX does not have general supplied jurisdiction, and their claims to such remain both canonically and doctrinally indefensible. Now, this is important, and this point I raised here, because many people will state, well, look, why did Pope Francis give them the right to have marriages? Well, there are rules around that. Why can they do confessions? There are rules around that. These are limited jurisdictions granted to them so that legitimate Catholics who are in communion with the Church, who go to SSPX chapels, don't have an invalid confession or an invalid marriage that is not seen as lawful in terms of divine law and ecclesial law. So thank you very much, Matthew Velasquez, for that. Thank you very much for the donation. Thank you. Mike Samau says, SSPX are heretics. The clergy and Catholics must be faithful to the Pope and not the person who was the Pope. Look, yeah, I don't know if they would. I'd have to. The problem is here, I had to do a huge amount of research on this. I would need to go and determine if they are heretics, if that is a valid claim to make. It may well be, but they are certainly rebellious, disobedient, and outside the church. They're definitely separatist, schismatic. And good Catholics who side with the SSPX, as the church and the popes have stated, are in danger of excommunication. The SSPX does have bishops. The SSPX does have Bishop Stephen Young. Shall it be? But why do they even bother claiming to be Catholic if they reject the papal authority? They give lip service. They claim to respect the Pope, to follow the Pope, to honor the Pope. There's lip service, but it's gaslighting because in practice, it's not so. Let me continue. Now, this is the last 2 pages, the final argument. I wrote 3 separate arguments. I prepared 3 separate arguments. One was, what does the magisterium say? 2, a general argument. And then 3, a specific rebuttal to the article that I showed you earlier. Now, I was emailed this and I was told that obviously I'm false and I'm lying and I just make things up and the usual sort of thing. So I prepared this as an argument and I sent this back to the individual involved, right? To say, look, here are 3 separate responses that I've prepared for you, okay? So that you can have a look and then you can verify all of this for yourself. JC 007 says, I'm so lost that what does this all mean? I don't like what I'm hearing. They are groups that have separated from the Catholic Church. They claim to be the true Catholic Church. They claim that the Catholic Church is invalid. It has lost its way, that Jesus and God have abandoned the Catholic Church, that the popes, in fact, the SSPX, Lefebvre, who runs the SSPX, has made the explicit claim, and I have this in the documents, we'll be discussing the SSPX in the future, that Rome is the Antichrist. He's called the Pope a heretic, he's called the Pope Satan, things like that. Strangely enough, very similar actions to what Martin Luther did. Now, I've had people say that they take offense to me drawing a parallel between Martin Luther and Bishop Lefebvre, but they are there. That's simply that. And yeah, and I think it's fair to mention it because his behavior, his actions are very Luther-like. It's Luther 2.0 to me. So let's go to response number 3. The argument presented in the article. Okay, so hold on, let's back off for one moment. So also, JC, what you have is, so they are a parallel organization, parallel Catholic Church. They look like the Catholic Church. They talk like the Catholic Church. They pretty much are an imitation, a mimic of the Catholic Church, but they are predatory. They are taking adherents from the Catholic Church and then also feeding toxic ideas into their mind. They're feeding the whole conspiracy that Rome is the Antichrist, Rome is Jezebel, Rome is corrupt. All of these ideas, especially after the whole Ballard Dodd story, a lot of this comes from and has been spread by the SSPX. So they've obviously created massive amounts of doubt, uncertainty, aggravation, distrust, paranoia, infighting between Catholics. So they're the ones who are pushing this idea. And I think Ballard Dodd, the more I read into the Ballard Dodd story, the less I believe Ballard Dodd. She seems to be a very confused woman, despite all of the claims. Now, I will mention, now, take this with a grain of salt, okay? Let's be careful here. There is Alice von Hildebrand, who is a great supporter of Ballard Dodd and a highly respected Catholic philosopher, and she died at the age of 98, and she was a great defender of Ballard Dodd. So, all fine and well. But in one instance, these historians that are discussing her mention that her story never changed. Alice von Hildebrand, her story never changed, and when they interviewed her, her story, they said, was verbatim the same. Now, this is fantastic, because the things she said in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s about Ballard Dodd are the same things she said today. But what struck me was that they were insisting, and look, there's room for me to misinterpret this, but yes, so yes, Catholics who attend, good point, Philip, Catholics who attend the SSPX, keep the SSPX going. If Catholics would simply abandon them, then they would fall apart. However, they did help keep the TLM alive. That's false. That is not a true argument. That is false. So there are aspects and nuances to that argument that rebuttal. Now, I had a discussion with someone recently who's a long-term Catholic, and they said they are not defenders of Bishop Lefebvre. They are not defenders of the SSPX. They do not support Lefebvre. They do not support the SSPX. And then they gave me 5 almost verbatim arguments from the SSPX to defend the SSPX. They made 5 claims, if I remember correctly. It was 5 arguments that they gave me that the SSPX itself uses in its apologetics to defend itself. So this is a non-SSPX, non-supporter who is quoting verbatim SSPX claims back to me because they don't follow the SSPX at all. Which I find a little strange, that good Catholics who don't support the SSPX are verbatim quoting an excommunicated bishop. And I'm sorry, but I cannot support, when you look at different opinions on the SSPX, you get hundreds of different opinions from everybody, from all and sundry. I am utilizing the source documents. I'm going straight to the canon law. So I am not trusting opinions. I will not trust opinions. I do not trust your bishop. I don't care who he is. Cardinal Burke is someone I'll listen to, and Father Ripperger I quite like. I like his stuff. But there's a lot of bad takes out there, and I am not interested in opinion. I'm interested in what do the documents say. That's it. So now, on this point, Alice von Hildebrand, these historians stated that she was verbatim in her arguments. Now, if I was working in law enforcement, from what I recall, if someone has a verbatim argument, if someone is telling you verbatim, word for word, something, that's a script. That is not memory, because anyone who rehearses something and then gives you the same verbatim thing, that's a script. They're acting. That is highly suspicious. That is not reason to go, well, yeah, they're sincere. It's the same story. There are always slight variations in the retelling, but a verbatim retelling is scripted. So I will leave it at that, and you take that for what you will. So Shalaby says that they are just technically Protestants. Why don't the church do them as they did to Luther, so to protect the faithful from their teachings? There's been a change in the attitude of the Catholic Church. What amazes me is the patience with which the papacy, the magisterium, has been treating these issues. Actually incredibly patient. And you can see the SSPX abuse of that kindness. You can, which actually shocks me. I'm so surprised to see the abusive way in which the SSPX have acted and the patient way in which the Catholic Church has acted. It's crazy to me. Okay, so let me see. Let me just continue. I don't believe the church is wrong. I believe they are dividing the church by intent. So I've heard a lot of people saying the traditional Latin Mass only exists because of Missal Refeb. Stephen Young, again, back to the Latin Mass. I will discuss that another time. We'll go into those details. But let's just say the story of the Latin Mass is used as a weapon. It is... I'm not going to trust any comment, and also these questions, the way that these questions are asked, are not sincere. These are polemical, rhetorical questions. They are loaded, and I need to unpack these from a calm standpoint, going back to history, going back to the documents. I'm interested in the source documents. Let me continue. Reason 3. I have 20 minutes and I have to get out of here. Response 3. The argument presented in this article, right? That's the one I showed you originally, the one from AKA Catholic, claiming that the Pope Francis has confirmed that SSPX has always had supplied jurisdiction, is not accurate for several reasons. The specificity of the Pope's grant, right? The faculties granted by Pope Francis in the letter regarding the Year of Mercy were explicitly specific to the sacrament of reconciliation during the Jubilee Year of Mercy. The Pope did not confer general jurisdiction or acknowledge the SSPX's asserted ongoing state of necessity. Importantly, the concessions were made temporary, right? The concessions made were temporary and meant to inclusively extend mercy, but did not serve as broad recognition of SSPX's jurisdictional claims outside of those specific conditions or beyond the specified time period. Now, we did see there from the words of the Pope that he extends it. In fact, if you read the Pontifical Commission letter issued by the Pope, he states that we are extending this for the purpose of saving souls, for the grace of saving the souls and the sacraments of those Catholics who attend SSPX churches. So, the misinterpretation of papal authority and intent. So, interpreting Pope Francis's actions as confirming SSPX's long-standing views on jurisdiction misrepresent the nature and scope of papal authority. The Pope's authority is to oversee and administer the provisions of church law precisely. Now, to simplify, there are effectively two strands of church law that are relevant to us here. Society of St. Pius X. These are the traditionalists, the trads, the radical trads, the rad trads, the ones who believe in that if you attend the traditional Latin Mass, then you're a true Catholic, and if you don't, you're a heretic. So yeah, and these are the guys who spread all the conspiracy theories about Vatican II and so on, and that's another story I will get into. But I'm not buying the standard Catholic narrative on any of this. I'm doing my own research because, yeah, I'm just going to the original documents because there's just too much confusion about this. So, right. So, misinterpretation of papal authority and intent. So, interpreting Pope Francis' actions as confirming the SSPX's claims on jurisdiction misrepresents the nature of his permission and the scope of his permission, right? The Pope's authority is to oversee and administer provisions of the church law precisely. Now, sorry, the law. There's ecclesial law, church law, canon law, and there's divine law, which is taken from examples within the Gospels, right? So, and then there's divine law, which seeks to interpret and understand and apply divine law. Like Jesus gave authority to Peter. Peter gave authority to the bishops, who then gave authority to the priests where they set up churches. That is divine law, and then ecclesial law determines how this is all applied. It's all of the authority and administration around that, right? So the Pope's authority is to oversee and administer the provisions of the church law precisely, and his directives are to be understood within the explicit context in which they are given. The idea that a specific, limited act implies a broad, indefinite concession misrepresents how jurisdiction is applied according to canonical norms. Now, the lack of canonical provision for general supplied jurisdiction. Now, again, there is a great deal more than I can say about this, but I've tried to make a condensed, simple argument dealing really with that article. So I will cover this in much more depth in the future. Church law is quite specific about the conditions under which jurisdiction is supplied. Danger of death, common error, or positive and probable doubt. None of these conditions are inherently or exclusively applicable to the situation addressed by Pope Francis, which means that his limited grant of jurisdiction does not validate SSPX claims concerning a permanent state of necessity or supply jurisdiction on that basis. Road Squatch, yes, a Catholic faction. They would be a splinter cell, a splinter group. I would call them a predatory mimic of the Catholic Church. They are predatory. They take people from the Catholic Church, and they've set themselves up as the one true Catholic Church, and also effectively Lefebvre was, and the Pope did call him, an anti-Pope. He was claiming effectively to be the true church authority, the Pope. It's a breakaway group, yep. Thanks, Villainous, well said. Temporal nature of papal concession. So the argument assumes that if the Pope granted jurisdiction during the year of mercy, that condition might automatically extend beyond it if circumstances do not change. However, papal provisions for jurisdiction are not automatically self-perpetuating. They cease when the declared period ends unless explicitly renewed or extended by the Pope. Now, given the need for the Pope to care for souls, as he stated in Ecclesia Dei, if you read Ecclesia Dei, then this is what they did, with concern for genuine Catholics who go to these parishes and are potentially not going to receive valid sacraments or marriages. Right? There was no subsequent declaration extending the specific grant of jurisdiction beyond the year of mercy. So it might be that post that there was, but so lack of recognition of state of necessity. So the Church does not officially recognize the state of necessity claimed by SSPX. Jurisdiction cannot be claimed or extended based on an unacknowledged or uncanonical state of necessity. Supplied jurisdiction by the Church is not meant to be self-assigned or assumed based on individual or group interpretations of their status or needs. So given these points, the argument that Pope Francis' actions during the Year of Mercy confirms SSPX's stance on supplied jurisdiction misrepresents the specific and temporary nature of the Pope's directive. It misinterprets canonical norms and overstates the implications of these directives on the SSPX's status and operations. So now I'm going to go back and I want to go to this document here. So this is on the Vatican website. I have 15 minutes and I have to go. Letter of the Pontifical Commission, Ecclesia Dei, to the ordinaries, your bishops of the Episcopal Conferences concerned on the faculties for the celebration of marriages of the faithful of the Society of St. Pius X. Okay? So let me just see. Notice there have been other initiatives have been ongoing in order to bring the Society of St. Pius X into full communion, because they are not in communion with the Church. The Holy Father decided to grant all priests of said society the faculty to validly administer the sacrament of penance to the faithful, to ensure the validity and licity of the sacrament and allay any concerns on the part of the faithful. He didn't make the SSPX valid. It's because there were concerns on the part of the faithful. And because they are not in communion, therefore these actions of theirs are not in any way valid or licit. So, following the same pastoral outlook, which seeks to assure the conscience of the faithful, despite the objective persistence of the canonical irregularity in which, for the time being, meaning the last 50 years, okay, for the time being the last 5 decades, right, since the late 70s, the Holy Father, following a proposal by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and the Pontifical Commission, has decided to authorize local ordinaries, that's your Catholic bishops in those dioceses, the possibility to grant faculties for the celebration of marriages of faithful who follow the pastoral activity of the society according to the following provisions. Insofar as possible, the local ordinaries to grant the delegation to assist at the marriage to a priest of the diocese. So the SSPX can assist at, given limited function, right? Or in any event, to a fully regular priest, right? So a regular priest, in theory, should preside over the wedding, such that the priest may receive the consent of the parties during the marriage rite, followed, in keeping with the liturgy of the Vitus Ordo, by the celebration of Mass, which may be celebrated by a priest of the society. So he's giving them special dispensation here. When the above is not possible, or if there are no priests in the diocese able to receive the consent of the parties, the bishop may grant the necessary faculties to the priest of the society who is also able to celebrate the Holy Mass, reminding him of the duty to forward the relevant documents to the Curia as soon as possible. Certain that in this way any uneasiness of conscience on the part of the faithful who adhere to the society, as well as any uncertainty regarding the validity of the sacrament of marriage, may be alleviated, and at the same time that the process towards full institutional regularization may be facilitated. The dicastery relies on your cooperation. So that here, this is 2017. And so this goes back to the original proclamation by Pope John Paul II. Right? So this is from the Vatican itself. This is on the Vatican website, Vatican VA. I'll just bring you the link so you can just see what the link is here, vatican.va. So this is an actual Vatican document. So I see too many SSPX people come on and it's like, no, we're in full communion, we're all good, everything's fine. None of that is true. That is not true. The Vatican has made special dispensation so that Catholics who go there will not have invalid confessions, invalid marriages. So that, and you can, another question we can ask at another time is, for instance, is an SSPX Mass sufficient to fulfill the Sunday obligation? If I recall correctly, the answer is no. Yeah, so there are many good groups in full communion, FSSP, IBP. Yeah, there are numbers of them, yes. So this is Catholic fraction, I'll stay on the ship. Yes, so if your captain is drunk, or if you think he's drunk, don't jump off the ship and go swim in the ocean or go sit in a raft. Your captain will sober up tomorrow or you'll get a new captain. But stay on the ship. So yeah, thanks. Yeah, I have a friend who drinks the SSPX Kool-Aid. Yeah, I know, there's a lot of that. So yeah, so guys, that's it for me. I need to get going shortly. I just thought I would do this because this, I seem to have stirred a hornet's nest. I seem to have upset a lot of people with my discussions on these issues in Catholicism. And yeah, I'm not happy with the answers that I'm finding in a lot of places. There's too much opinion, too many different stories. So therefore, hi there, Sandro. So therefore, I thought I would provide this and I will go through much more depth. But what I will do is I am going to take I did sort of look through what are the 7 most common arguments that the SSPX uses to justify their position. And then, of course, I'm going to do these short little talks to try to analyze those positions and give you a simplified view, a thorough but simplified view of the Orthodox Catholic position on what that is. it's a valid mass, but an illicit mass. That's a fair point. And yeah, we need to start also going through what those terms mean. So that's something that also has to be discussed, the differences in those terms and those distinctions. So yeah, thank you guys. I need to get out of here, but thank you very much for your time. It was very last minute. I announced it 5 minutes before, but it's just, like I said, I seem to have stirred up a hornet's nest. And thus, I thought I needed to speak about this and other issues like this. Is the Catholic magisterium books the best way to understand? I guess so. I mean, yeah, it's a really hard subject. I'm still trying to come to grips. I read the catechism. I mean, go through the sections of the catechism that are relevant. Go through papal encyclicals. It's a huge institution. It's not easy to understand. So I'm still coming to grips with it. So guys, I must go. I must be somewhere else because my morning event was shifted to this evening. So that just threw me for a loop. So Eric Dilly says, Lloyd, love what you're doing. Keep it up. I pray that one day you'll join the true Catholic Church because we need people like you. Well, thank you very much. Much appreciated. So guys, thank you. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's brought you some understanding. And so now in terms of what's happening with the SSPX. So thank you. And I will see you guys soon. I might be on later with Francis Boole, but depends what time I finish tonight.